In this video, we're going to make use of Bubble, Make, and Rapid API to create a newsletter based off getting data from an existing news article. So here you can see we have our brand new Bubble app open, and this one I've called My Make Demo. And before we get started, it's important to note up front that we are going to be making use of the Workflow API. If I go into Settings and look at the API tab, you can see it says here, using APIs and backend workflows is only available on the starter plan and above. So luckily for us, Bubble does allow us a 2-week free trial, so we can use these features. So if I go back to my home page with all my apps, you can see here it says try free upgrade for 2 weeks. So I'm going to click on that, start free trial. So this is going to allow us now to make use of these backend workflows, workflow APIs, and that's integral to connecting with Make. So let's go into settings to the API tab and let's enable workflow API and backend workflows. And then we're going to enable the data API as well. There's a privacy warning and we're going to say got it. We are going to look at our Make scenarios. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new scenario. So we're going to start from scratch. And Make connects to various apps. So I'm going to click on this plus sign over here and I'll start searching for Bubble. Click on Bubble. And these are all the different things that you can do with Bubble. So we're going to go with the most basic one, which is create or update a data thing. So I'll click on that. And we do already have a connection, but I would like to make a new one so I can demonstrate this. And I'll call this connection name My Demo Bubble Connection. And the domain type, we have the choice of application domain or custom domain. And I'm going to go with application domain. For this, all we need to do is make note of what the app name is. So in this case, it's My Make Demo. So we type that instead of the full URL, just the app name. Then the API token is what we're going to develop. So we are going to generate a new API token. This one I'll call My Demo API key. And if you hover over here, you are able to click it in order to copy it to the clipboard. So I've copied that and I'll paste it over here. Environment, it's either going to be development or live. They call it released over here. That's your version test is development and version live is your released. So we're going to use development for now. And I'll say save. And then we see this error come up here. So this is the way that Make has created a connection between Bubble and Make. And we have to create a data type in Bubble called myTable. So we can see that's all lowercase. So I'm going to go into Bubble. I'll go into data and I'll create a new type called myTable, just as they've said. And for this, what we need to do is we need to create some sort of field. So we can create a field, just a very basic one called email, and that'll be of type text. And we need to have a record in Bubble for Make to be able to talk to it. So this is quite a unique process, but it is quite specific to this integration, which is why this is a good tutorial just to follow to set up this connection. So I'll go into app data and I will create a new my table. And the entry really can be something very simple, such as bubble@make.com. So now what we need to do is we also need to expose this to the API. If I go into settings, you'll see I now have the myTable data type. We may as well select on user as well, but I'll click on myTable because if this is not selected, then it won't be able to read it. It's a privacy rule, and by selecting that, it allows Make to view that myTable. So let's try again. We'll click on save. And there we go. Our connection has been created. And that is how we will now create new things in Bubble using Make. The next thing we're going to do is we want to extract data from our news article on the web. We're going to be using this one from WGMI. And I'm going to go into Rapid API. It's basically a marketplace for different APIs, and you can search for what you are looking for. So if I search article extraction, let's get some more results over here. The one that we have been using happens to be this first one. Over here, you can see we have different endpoints. I'm on the endpoints tab, and these are the two endpoints they've given us. The endpoint we're going to use is the extract endpoint, and we can use our article over here. I'll copy and paste the URL, and I will go down to the required parameters. There's only one major required one. The rest are optional. So I'm going to paste that in over there. I'm going to test this endpoint. And there we have it. There is our article. This is how it comes back in JSON format. So that looks good. It's provided us various fields over here, or various properties. And best online business to start as a beginner, and that was the title. So yes, that's right. So this is the API we're going to use. And to do that, we're going to go back to our request example over here. Rapid API lays it out quite nicely for us. So what we're going to do is we are going to copy the different variables over here. So it's a get API call. That's the URL that we want to use. And these are the different parameters we're going to use as well. There are two headers. It is our Rapid API key. It's specific to our account, and the host that we are going to paste in over there. So let's go ahead and add these. We're going to go into Bubble, and this is going to be using the API connector. You can see we have no plugins at the moment, so I'll search for, well, API connector comes up first, so we will install that. Add another API, and this will be our article API. And I'm going to add a shared header so that it'll apply to all calls. So I know there were two over there. I'm going to go and grab those. So it was this key with this value. And it was this key with this value. So those are headers taken care of. And now we have the actual API call that we want to make. And it is a get call to this URL over here, extract. And the parameters that we had, there are three parameters: the URL, the JavaScript timeout, and media. So these two seem to be optional. So we can probably ignore these. We can just enter URL as our parameter. So I'll add that over here, add parameter. And I'm going to go ahead and use our same news article over here. We're going to uncheck private because we want to be able to use this and change it dynamically. And we're going to make this an action as well so that we can call it in our workflows. Let's rename it so we know what it's called. Extract article API call. Let's initialize this call. There we go. So we've got a whole bunch of information coming back, which is great. So that worked, and we're going to say save. So now we have access to this API and extracting the article information. And we are going to build a very basic front end. So I'm going to get an input. And I'm going to create a button. And I'll just say extract. And what we're going to do here is we are going to use this input to paste our article into, and the extract is going to take that and get the article. So we want to check that that is working. So what we'll do is we'll get a text, and this is going to be the article. And I'm going to put this text into a column container, and you'll see why in a second. So I'll call this group article, and within that it is text article. The group is going to be of type text, and the text within it is going to take the parent group's text. When I click on extract, I'm going to add workflow, and we want this to grab the information from the API. So I'm going to go over here, step 1, and it's going to be a plugin because it's from our API connector, and it's the article API. The URL, this is our test that we use. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert dynamic data, and we're going to get that information from our input value. And then once we've got that information, let's display it so we can see that it's worked. So I'll go to step 2, and I will say element actions, display data in our group. And you see that the text element is not there, and that is why I created a group article, because you can only display data in the group. So we'll go to group article, and what do we want to display? Well, it's the result of step 1. So I'm going to say article text. And if I click on preview now, we should be able to copy and paste this URL into our input, extract, and there we have it. There is our article text. So we know that it's worked. Now we want to send this to Make to be able to create a new newsletter for us. So before that, let's go and create a news data type called newsletter. And we will create a new field called content. So what's going to happen is we are now going to send this article off to Make, and we're going to ask it to help us write a newsletter based on this article. So what we'll do here is we will create a button, copy and paste, and I'll say create newsletter. And we are going to send this to Make. Now, because we are sending it to Make, we need Make to be listening out for this particular article that we're sending. So we have created our connection over here, but what we want to do is we actually want to be listening out for this. So this clock feature over here says that this scenario will run every 15 minutes, but we don't actually want it to run every 15 minutes because we'll be waiting forever for that. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to delete this module, and we're going to create a new trigger. So I'll go to Bubble, and there's this module down here that allows you to look out for or listen for calls coming from Bubble, and that's why it says instant watch events. It triggers when an event is posted from your Bubble application. So if I do that, you'll see it changes to a lightning bolt because it's not going to be looking at this every 15 minutes or at any time interval. It's going to be happening instantly. So this now involves webhooks. And for webhooks, what we need to do is we need to send something from Bubble, and the webhook in Make is going to catch that API call that we're going to send. So from webhook, choose a webhook. Well, we have some available, but I'm going to add a new one. And I'm just going to call this one my demo webhook. And there, it's given us an endpoint that we can use. And so I'm going to copy address to clipboard over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into Bubble and we're going to set this up as well. We're going to be using the API connector again. We're going to create another one, and this is going to be our make API. And what we're going to do is we are going to send something from Bubble to make. So let's create an API call. And because we are sending it with information to the webhook, we are going to say post. And we're going to paste our webhook URL in there. And this is going to be an action because we want it to happen during the workflows. So to establish this connection, we are actually going to change this to our data type is text. And I'm going to put a very basic parameter here. And I'm going to make this dynamic by using the greater than less than sign. And that's going to be called URL. And I'm going to close off my JSON with my curly braces. Great, so it's unchecked private. I'm just going to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just to see that this is working. I'm going to call this newsletter API call. We need to see that this is working on make side. So we have a Bubble integration over here, and we need to test that this is working somehow. So I'm going to run this module only. It contains errors. Okay, let's see what those errors are. Okay, so we are running this module and you can see it's spinning, and that's because it's busy listening. I haven't sent anything to it yet. What we should see is this react as soon as I send it from Bubble's end. So what we have here is our API call, and I'm going to initialize the call. And you can see we have a text response saying accepted. And that's why I enjoy using this text data type over here, because it gives me this response. So if I go back to make, yes, we can see something has happened. I'll click on the URL 12345. So our webhook has been initialized, and we can start using that. So basically, when we send information, it's going to be going through the API connector. This URL is going to be dynamic, and it's going to come through to make. And then what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a new thing. So we are going to add bubble thing, create and update a new thing. And just to show you the difference, this first one is to accept the webhook. So this is our instant trigger. The second one is writing data to Bubble. So you may be wondering why we had to create this connection in two ways. We did a connection at the beginning of the video, and that was to enable us to write data to Bubble. This one is purely just to listen out for it. So this is a different type of connection. It's receiving it, whereas this one is sending it back to Bubble. And that's why we had to make these two different connections in these two different ways. So I'm going to be using our demo that we made earlier, our my demo Bubble connection. And once we've got the information from step 1 over here, we are going to be creating a new thing, and the type name is going to be newsletter. And remember, within newsletter, we had a field called content. So type name, this is where you have to type it quite accurately. There's no drop down, so you do have to reference your data types accurately. So it's going to be a newsletter. I'm not referring to any particular newsletter because we are creating a new one. And our entry fields, well, there's only one at the moment. I'm going to add an item. Again, make sure you type that accurately. So it's going to be content. And type is going to be of type text. And our value will be whatever happens in between here. So now this is the key thing, what happens in between. So we've sent make the URL. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to send this to ChatGPT. But we don't want to send ChatGPT the URL of the article. We want to send them the article text itself. So we are going to include ChatGPT as a module. And luckily, Make already has OpenAI as a module. And you can see all the different modules over here. So the one for using ChatGPT is to create a completion. You can find that in the OpenAI documentation as well. And I'm going to position that in between. So it's going to send the information from Bubble, go to ChatGPT, and then whatever that response is, we are going to create a new newsletter with that. So over here, you would need to create a connection. I already have one set up, but if you are starting from scratch, you would click on Add, and all you have to do is enter your API key from OpenAI and your organization ID if you have one. So we're going to create a chat completion. The model, we can use GPT-4. And we are going to add an item. The first one we can say is system. And it is going to be, you are an accomplished copywriter. Very basic. And then we are also going to add an item saying the user, please write me a newsletter using the article text provided below. The article will begin with, I'm going to use square brackets, article start, and end with article end. And then I'm going to add my square brackets again, article start, and leave a space, article end. Great, so in between here is the information that we want to bring from our step one. And in fact, what we want here is the article text, not the URL that we saw earlier. So I'm going to go back to our API connector. And what we're going to do here is, instead of URL, we are going to send article text. And I'm going to call that article text as well. I haven't made it dynamic, so let's do that. Let's add in our greater than, less than signs. And this is my article. And I'm going to run this module again just to set up the connection. Accepted. And there it is. This is my article. And then ChatGPT is going to take that. So now that we have that set up, if I go down to our prompt over here, I'm going to click on article text. You can see that this is bouncing. It is showing that that's where it's coming from. So it's article text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our new newsletter. And the content is going to be coming from OpenAI. So let's just run this module. And there's our response. It's written us an article, choices, collection, content. So here's the content. And what we're going to do is we're going to create our new newsletter using the values from over here. It hasn't recognized it as yet. Let's try again. There we go. So we're going to use the choices, message, content. And that's going to be our newsletter. So let's have a look here. So we've got it coming in from Bubble. It's going to ChatGPT. and then it's creating a new newsletter. So I'll trigger from this page. It's going to be the create newsletter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create newsletter, add workflow, and I'm going to take the data from on the page. So it's going to be from this group that we sent the data to before. So I'm going to go to plugins, make API, and article text. This is my article. We are going to make that dynamic, and we are going to take the text from our group article text, and there's something called escaping characters where the spaces and different special characters in JSON aren't really accepted. So Bubble has a built-in feature called format as JSON safe. So you just click on more and then you go down to formatted as JSON safe. What this does do, however, is it actually includes the quotation marks for you. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of the quotation marks that we have in our API call. And I'll just take them out over here because they will be included in the JSON safe formatting. There we go. So make API, and it's the newsletter API call, and that will go to make, and it'll come back as a newsletter, hopefully. And so when it does that, what we're going to do is we want to display our new article down here. So let's create a new text. Because this is going to be our first and only article, all I have to do over here is say insert dynamic data, do a search for newsletters. It'll be let's say the last item. And what do we want to show? We want to show the content. So what should happen now is we will extract our data from our article using the input field and extract. It'll display it over here in the group. We will then click on create newsletter, and it will take the information that is in that group, that text. It'll send it to make. Make will then in turn take it and it'll send it to OpenAI. OpenAI will return it, and it will create a new newsletter for us where the content is going to be the newsletter that we requested it to write for us. So let's try and run that now. Let's refresh our page. Let's grab our article over here. And now we're going to say create newsletter. Oh, we have an issue with our API call. Okay. So we have not made our make scenario live, so I will turn it on. It has errors still, so let's have a look what the errors are. Let's save this and see what happens. Let's turn it on again. There we go. So we just needed to save it first. And we can initialize our app. If we go into our history, this allows us to track it. And you can see here it says running. If I click on details, it actually shows it running in real time. At the moment, it's gone through step 1, which was sending the information from Bubble. And it's currently on this OpenAI step over here. So we have an error. So let's go back and have a look. The error we encountered was type not found newsletter. So that's a great error to see because it brings up an important thing in Bubble, and that is that we have not exposed the newsletter as part of the API. So I have to go into newsletter and we can try that again. So let's go back into our diagram. And what we can do is we can turn the scenario on again. Let's delete the old data. And let's refresh this page. So we're going to copy our link. We'll say extract. And now that we have our article, we will say create newsletter. And we can see it running there. Great. And we see a successful 111. So what we should do is go back over here and we see our newsletter is complete. There's added some emojis. It's given us a subject, which is great. So there we see the extraction part and then creating the newsletter part, using that information, using ChatGPT as well through Make, and then sending it back to Bubble as a completed newsletter.